So somebody said about last week's episode that we talked too much about alcohol and it just wasn't very responsible at all. So I'm going to try and avoid that wherever we can with this one.
Hold on, I'm just going to have a quick drink. What did they say?
I nearly choked on my vino.
How are we three?
Well, I've got a bit of a cold. But I soldier on because that's what heroes do. How about you, Callum? You've got ill children, haven't you?
I have been sicked on 3 times so far this week, and it is Wednesday.
Yeah, it's not even that far into the week.
No, I'm every day so far, so that's good.
Just to confirm, this is your children doing that, not random strangers.
I know. I mean, we did go to a Christmas party, but thankfully it was just the children.
Oh, right, yeah.
My favourite one was the missus was like, "How much was she sick? Was it a lot?" Which I said, yes, it was. And she looked at me quite puzzled. So then I opened my jacket because the baby had sicked down into my jacket like Superman. So I opened my jacket to reveal a great big patch of milky sick.
Was it that jacket that looks a bit like your skinned bungle?
It was, yeah. It needs a second wash. Dog pissed on it once, baby puked on it second.
I think it's not so much the illness that's being reflected, it's just their sartorial, their sort of their views on your sartorial taste. Because I personally, I'd piss and puke all over it if I saw you wearing it near me.
Welcome to CountrySlide, Britain's foremost rural chat podcast.
I think we rank for society now.
Yeah, you were just basically there's what there's the rest is history, and then there's us. So you've either got Dominic Sambrook and Tom Holland, or you've got us three. That's the two choices you have here. I mean, because no one listens to Rory Stewart anymore because they think he's just gone so completely wet that no one can listen to him. And the other bloke who took us all to war, no one likes him anyway. The only person who likes him is Rory Stewart and himself. What's his name anyway? I can't remember. Tony Blair's little lapdog.
Campbell's soup.
Campbell. That's him.
If Spitting Image came back, do you think they'd have to tone down Rory Stewart? Like make him look plainer?
He does look a little bit like... Do you know, I read his book, and because I have a lot of time for him, and he is a very good friend with my literary agent. And he's one of these guys, I think I'd really, really want to like him and warm to him. But sometimes I just think, oh, stop sitting on the fence and wanting to be nice to everybody. Just be a lot more like us. Just be a little bit more like, say, we and poo and words that we can't say anymore. Otherwise, we get an explicit thing on our stuff and the Yanks can't listen to us.
I think I've said piss already. So.
You have said piss, yeah, you have.
Did he? I apologise to any listeners of a sensitive nature who are listening to this, because Richard tells me that we're big in Denmark. Is that right?
We are big in Denmark. I think we are in the top 50 in Denmark. That shows how big the podcast market actually is in Denmark. The fact that we're in there.
I'm big in Japan.
All right. Big in Japan?
Right. 5'11" is quite tall.
What are we going to talk about today? I can't even remember. I've actually written some notes here, but it looks a bit like sort of I've just written random words down, and I'm thinking, what the hell does that mean? Because I'm sure Amy did give us sort of some sort of script that we were to stick to, but I might be on the wrong page.
We're in the pre-Christmas episode, so we had the Shameless Christmas Gifting Guide, which I shilled out for Hick Micro, and all they gave me was this hat and a nice tool.
I got my hat too.
It's quite a good hat, actually. It's quite annoying. I don't want to tell Glenn how good the hat is because I don't want to admit it that he's actually given us quite a nice hat.
I wore it today. I'm laying a hedge at the moment, doing a staked and bound posh one out on the Barkers, just down the road of Westhorpe. And So that involves me, rather than the sort of usual sort of almost Westmoreland style thing that we do, where it's all just laying it down, crooking it in place. I have to hit in a lot of stakes. I use a 7-pound lump hammer, and I once was sad enough that I worked out the average number of times that I hit each stake in, and then we times that by and it ended up as some sort of stupid workout. And about February, if you look at me in the mirror, I've got this sort of Garth-like right arm and shoulder because I'm whacking stakes in ad nauseum, and my sort of withered left arm. But so I do sweat a lot, and it might just be because I'm old now, anyways, which is I sweat a lot. But I put my Hick Micro hat on, and it kept the chill off, and it was absolutely brilliant. So I sort of, as I was sweating there with my bulging right bicep, I was going, "Thank you, Glenn. You sent us a good thing through." And then I just undid a few bolts on stuff just to use the toolbox which he sent me. So my wife hopefully will be able to still drive along the road. And the car's feeling a bit wonky, but yeah, but it's all right. I use my toolbox.
With your fancy hedge laying and staking, what percentage of what you do is actually fancy hedge laying compared to just make a hedge laying? How much is for people? How much is for partridge?
20% for people, 80% for partridges, largely these days, because this particular hedge, while we're laying it in that particular style, is the Barkers, one of the now 14 farmers in the High Suffolk cluster, of which I am a part of, and it's one of the routes that we go when we're taking visitors to show them around. And we're doing quite an interesting thing, actually. So there's a lovely pond which has been renovated. I can't remember quite how many ponds the Barkers have rejuvenated on there, and we've done an entire hedgerow management plan for the entire High Suffolk farm cluster, and I think we arrived at 302 kilometres of hedgerows that we have, which we measured and assessed. And this particular hedge is being laid, staked and bound. So we can show people, say, well, here's traditional craft. And then we lead them through this bit of the farm. And then we've got one field of, I can't remember how many hectares it is, a big old field. And we've done every single option under CountrySlide stewardship of how you manage hedges around this particular field, so that we can show people, we'll say, well, this is the regrowth you get on this. This is how coppicing works. This is how conservation laying, this is how staking and binding works. So people, farmers, and also just visitors who can sort of gorp at stuff, can see how it actually works. And so you've got living science, if you like, in front of your eyes there. And it's quite cool, really. But I quite like doing the posh hedges, but they're not that, they don't pay that well, really, because by the time you've fiddled and fannied about,
what makes a posh hedge versus a common peasant scum hedge?
Okay, staking and binding is a posh hedge because it is more of a traditional style. So Midland Bullock style is usually the one we do, and it looks aesthetically beautiful. It builds a good hedge. It makes them grow. It probably gives you 1 year faster of this, getting this basal density that we're after. But after that, you wouldn't really know. I mean, the National Hedge Laying Society would probably shoot me. They were going to put a fatwa out on me for saying this. But to be perfectly honest, here in arable country, the conservation laying style that we've developed, you don't really need to do the staking and binding, but it cocks your leg up the lamppost and it says, look at this. We've done this, and this is amazing, and people like it. And if that's the thing that floats their boat and gets them so they're saying, gosh, farmers are actually doing something for wildlife, then I'm more than happy to go and stake and bind some hedges around the place. But I think 20%, to answer your question, Richard, will be about how much we do staking and binding hedges.
Because we've got to do a patch in the woods, or the bit of woodland we rent, half manage, and we're going to do it between Christmas and New Year, which is, I think, referred to as Taintmas, because it's the bit in between. We're going to do it in that period just because it's on the edge of a road and all the delivery vans use that road. So hopefully they won't be around during that week. So it should be nice and quiet. But I've got to decide whether I'm going to do it fancy and spend a lot of time cutting steaks and binders and things from the woodland behind, or whether I'm just going to take a 25-foot tall bit of hazel and bend it over to make a 25-foot long leany bit.
Can't you just build a fence?
Well, nature builds your own fence if you lay a hedge.
Yeah, get with the program, Callum.
That was a weak bite.
That's a weak bite, like a sound bite.
My advice along the side of a road would be to stake and bind it, and I'll tell you for why. Because if you've got vehicles going along there, wind rock, that sort of stuff, and also if they bounce into it, you're more likely. It's more secure and solid, but that would be my bag. If I was
this is that manky one I sent you the video of, which is got the black poplar in it. So it's got more holes in it than current agricultural policy. So have you done anything else to whiz through your segment on what Richard did this week?
Yes, well, what Richard did this week, I went beating on Saturday. First time going beating this season. Because I don't go on sort of early season shoots, and I took my young dog, Lark's sister Blythe, Lark being Callum's little Cocker Spaniel, and I took her. Now they're approaching 3 rapidly, but she has been so slow to mature. I think because she lives with her mum basically, and so she's not quite sort of grown up mentally. But I took her, and she was absolutely mint. And a lot of Cocker Spaniel experts that I actually rate said, give her time. They're sometimes slow to mature. The penny will drop. And the penny dropped last weekend. And so I took her out. She was absolutely fantastic. She hunted up just well enough in front of me. She's got her mother's nose and more some. And because she's slightly finer and slighter, she slipped through this... one of the covers there. This is a lovely estate called Rivers Hall. Bold, yeah, Rivers Hall, lovely place, which is on the Essex-Suffolk border, and it's so well managed. But it's like stepping back in time to the 50s. Robert Graves, who's the gamekeeper there, is cut out of the old cloth. He still rears all his birds under bantams. He is one of those gamekeeper, countryman, naturalists who is just delightful. And they got some woodland management done there a couple of years ago, and they got rid of a lot of the old rhododendron, which Robert was a bit worried about because it did leave these woods looking hellish bare. But now there's some natural regen coming through, and thorn and bramble starting to make its opinion.
Quite big, tall trees, from what I remember. In a lot
That's
of,
right.
places.
Massive, great.
Quite sparse on the ground. Quite great big trees.
Yeah. Well, now because they've actually thinned all that old roadie out the way, it's got some decent cover starting to regenerate underneath. And little Blythe was like a ferret going through there, and she was finding birds that dogs more experienced than her missed. And so I bought back a couple of pheasants and a couple of partridges, and we're going to talk about food soon, aren't we? So I'll tell you what I did with the partridges. And yeah, she was just the bee's knees, really. So that's what I've been up to. I've been hedge laying, which is yet again, it's like Groundhog Day. Bit of beating, and we had a farm cluster meeting where we talked about what we've been up to, and this very exciting new grey partridge project, which I'll tell you all about in a couple of weeks' time once we've sort of got all the funding in situ and whatnot. But we're doing a sort of a species specific recovery project across the entire 6,000 hectares of the High Suffolk Farm cluster, which is specifically focused on the grey partridge, but has got absolutely nothing at all to do with shooting. because we think that the grey partridge has missed out on life in getting as much love and attention as other red-listed birds, largely because it's a game bird.
So, Callum, what have you been up to this old week of ours? That was a crap segue.
I was about to remark on that tash that has grown back.
We don't talk about the tash. Well, the tash was always there when I had a beard. It's just now there's only the tash. I'm not allowed to have a beard for the thing I'm doing. So, Callum, to try and bring this back onto rails, what did you do this week apart from be vomited on by children?
Started the week. I've been meaning to make gravy all week. Get ahead with the gravy.
Britain's premier field sports photographer, ladies and gentlemen.
So I've been meaning to make gravy all week. Haven't had the time. It's been chaos. Shot a Christmas party at the weekend. Got a video of that to do. Painfully behind because I have to try and entertain 2 sick children and do all the stuff that accompanies that. But before the lurg took hold in the house, we went to Audley End Estate for their little Christmas thing. Lovely estate. Did you?
Yeah, but just on the edge of Audley End. Yeah,
it's such a nice. It's one of these great big houses that have managed to use itself as a public space in order to keep the money coming in. And they do all sorts of stuff. They've got a fantastic Christmas, Christmas event. You get a train, little miniature railway, ride it around. You see Santa and his missus.
Merry Christmas.
Sorry, did you hear all that? I don't know what's going on downstairs.
Have you got ghosts there?
Well, I don't know. It might do.
Jeff Garrett is the head keeper at Audley End. He's got a great moustache.
He has, yes.
Very, very good gamekeeper. And I think something quite sort of serious in the NGO, in the National Gamekeepers Organisation. And yeah, he's a top man. He runs a very useful operation there that you feel loved.
He's a fantastic pigeon shot, isn't he?
He is. God, yes, he could shoot the eye out of a fly at 30 paces, that fella.
I think we were next to him at the game fair one year where we did a video with the chap from Oakbank. We were next to Jeff at one point.
Yeah.
I never actually spoke to him, but yeah, I've seen him on various YouTube bits.
I interviewed him for the Wild Food People pod as well. He came on that. But the only reason he did that was because he remembered me taking a photo of him for the NGO, for the National Gamekeepers for an awards thing. So he knew I was a real person despite my appearance.
Yeah, with that moustache. Well, perhaps he felt akin with you because you share a sort of similar facial hair rather than my sort of wispy, Scandi type sort of beard affair that I have going on.
Maybe it was that tribal thing that he felt that by taking his picture, you'd captured part of his soul.
Yeah, apparently that's what they do in North Essex. They do that. Yeah, I see anything.
It's very spiritual up here. Slightly into Hertfordshire, very spiritual.
Oh yeah, it really is. Do you know? I went and did a Mickey take thing on. Because Richard's trying desperately to get us to go and be sort of push the podcast out there. So from our last one, I went and did a sort of pretending I was one of these influencers who are like on, all the things all you see on Instagram where they're just wandering around with kit on. And it was ridiculously well received. People just thought, but they said, why don't you change your accent?
Next.
Yeah. Well,
or like one of those, like when girls have like a shopping haul, like they get a package from ASOS. You need to get a package from, I don't know, Rhymer Trees and be like, yeah, today we've got the hazel, we've got a little bit of blackthorn.
Oh, look, wonders. I can't believe it. There's a bit of spindle.
We've got some yearlings and, these steaks are fantastic.
Yeah.
I think what it should be is, get ready with me. Get ready with me for a day of hedge laying in a manky field somewhere in Suffolk while the wind comes straight off the Holland, straight through into my arse crack.
Get ready for a day in a stinking swamp.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to have to start watching, because I literally just block or do anyone who's one of those influencers.
Send ones to Richard to copy.
Send them through to me to copy, and then perhaps these individuals may realise the people who you are sending through to me, because I really have a problem with this. I think that, I'm not, what I would say is I'm not a great sort of clarion bang the drum for shooting, because I keep saying I think it's just part and parcel of rural life. I go out and shoot my own dinner, and I see more benefits for wildlife from gamekeepers doing what gamekeepers do than they don't. Now, I know that some gamekeepers do stuff that doesn't necessarily benefit wildlife, but I think they're few and far between, and I don't see many of them, right? So therefore, that's where I go. But I cannot abide the whole thing of these bloody influencers who are going along and trying to turn something that I just see as part and parcel of my life into something that is, wow, look at me. I mean, that's a bit like me sort of going along and taking pictures of myself going to the toilet. It's just a fundamental part of life. You don't need to
go in the group chat.
Well, obviously, I'd take a photograph of my stool to send through to you because you're the arbiter of stools. But, that's just between you and I. No one listens to this anyway unless they're in Denmark, and that's all they do is look at poo. I've been to Denmark, and my God, there's a lot of pigs there. Very clean Denmark, very clean. I've never seen cleaner pig farms in my life. But anyway, back to the point. I don't think...
What was that? That was like a fever dream. What happened there?
I don't think.
Richard, can you raise one arm? Are you okay? Are you okay? What was...
I don't think the influencers are actually any good for shooting to be accepted, because most of the time they think they're being really cool with silly outfits, and then you go and have something ridiculous like their blimmin' dachshund waddles along and badly picks up a bird, which you go, oh, I can see that partridge is still alive. Why are you letting a dachshund pick it up? And everyone's going, oh, look, Tarky's done this. And everyone lunges around with a silly pair of wellies that would let the water in 6 months' time. No, stop it. Instagram influencers, stop it.
Faux country folk that have dogs called like Hobnob, or oh yeah, no, we've got this dog, his name's Hobnob. This one's, oh yeah, we got another, there's a Whippet, his name's Marmite. Yeah, fantastic. Is my favourite dog.
Basically, if dogs aren't called Blythe and Mabel, then that's just a stupid name, really. It's certainly got to be named after a Suffolk river. Isn't that correct, Callum?
No, we should have called them after biscuits.
Callum, your gravy.
I haven't got to make the gravy yet, but the gravy is an integral part. But what I did make is lots and lots of chocolates. I considered that I don't mind doing my Christmas shopping and knocking it all out in M&S or somewhere quite nice. And
knock it out in M&S.
You got banned for that, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I had a copy of Country Life, and there was a particular spread that I liked.
You should see what he did in Waitrose. Disgusting.
Did you spot the ladybird?
Well, I like to read when I have a poo, and that's also why I got banned from Waterstones.
Chocolates.
Yeah, we I wanted to tell you that I'd made chocolates for people, but we got distracted by jokes about wanking. So this is why this podcast exists. So we can have these important
It's why we've only got 8 listeners.
Where does the chocolates and the gravy? So, I mean, you making those together, that could have been a disaster.
I reckon that'd be quite good.
What, gravy-filled chocolates?
I wouldn't do gravy-filled chocolates, but I would definitely put cocoa powder in gravy, because I think it would be a revolution. I put chocolate in spaghetti bolognese. It's quite good.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I like doing my Christmas shopping, but I always think something homemade is a nice touch, and I'm not good at much other than cooking. So, and it's also a very family friendly thing to do. So we made chocolates. So we got some single origin, really fancy chocolate bars, melted those down, got some double cream, and then put delicious things into it. We made homemade caramel, we had Baileys, we had lots of coffee. So we made 3 separate ones. One was a salted caramel, which we put a small amount of liquid so they're quite firm. And then we did a Baileys one, which is not child friendly. And I also did a coffee one, which was lots and lots of coffee and lots of double cream and a hell of a lot of sugar. And the cocoa powder content was like insane amounts, like 80 something percent. So it's really, really strong. And I put those together. The chocolate ones just want to turn desperately to liquid. The Baileys ones come out really well, which is things that I've gifted to my friends. And the salted caramel ones are just for me, and they are delicious. And the kids can have the salted caramel ones as well, so that's all good. But yeah, I made a whole batch. So you melt your chocolate down, add your liquid. You got to make sure it doesn't split. And if it does split, weirdly, you just put more liquid into it, and it stops it from splitting. You'd expect that more liquid would make it more liquidy, but no, it doesn't. It makes it kind of velvety and good. And then chill it in the fridge, and then you can ball them up the next day and dust them in cocoa powder, and you get these little chocolate treats. I've currently got the coffee ones. So
what sort of weird stuff? What sort of weird stuff would Richard put in chocolates? I mean, we sort of putting hemlock and I don't know, lungwort or something.
Our favourite recipe to get people onto the idea of putting weird stuff in chocolate or doing weird stuff with wild food isn't our recipe. I think there's a guy called Fergus Drennan who came up with this, which is you take wood ear, which is those little jelly ear shaped things that grow on dead elders. So Auricularia auricula judea, which the Judea bit gives you a hint as to the unfortunate previous common
what
name.
they used to be called. Yeah,
exactly. I'm not going to say that because I think that actually would get us banned off Apple Podcasts.
Is that what people call bat's ear fungus? Because it literally looks like a bat's ear.
Maybe wood ear or jelly ear tends to be what they go for now. But you take those, you dry them because they dry quite well, and you can just throw them into stews and things when they're dry. But you take them, dried ones, and you put them in rum, in a jar of rum. It rehydrates with rum, and then you take that and put it in molten dark chocolate, and you can make chocolate-covered rum-flavored mushrooms.
Oh, that sounds quite nice.
It's very, very good. We have them when we do the foraging courses in the summer. Amy makes batches of them because we've always got loads of these dried mushrooms. So a day or two before the course, she makes a batch of them, and they always go. People go through the little taster things, and there's this pesto, and there's this elderberry gummies, and all these other things that we make for people just to show them what you can do with wild food if you put a bit of imagination into it. But when we get to the rum-infused mushrooms in dark chocolate, they disappear. They're gone straight away.
That sounds incredible.
It does sound incredible, doesn't it? I did a cool thing with partridge. Do you want to hear about what I did with partridge?
Is it why you're banned from Waitrose again?
Well, no. I carried them as sort of adornments around my neck but I make a thing called popcorn partridge, which is something that when I can't remember who showed it to me.
Is this the play on the KFC popcorn chicken type
thing? Probably so. And so it was something that I made for my son Charlie when he was tiny. And basically you breast out on the crown partridges. There's no point cooking a whole partridge. I'm afraid I can't be bothered. It's too fiddly. I'm not plucking them. So I just take the crown off, cut the breasts off, cook up the little breast carcass to make a stock. And so that's the sort of KFC type gravy that I'm making over there. And then you get the breasts, and then you dip them, first of all, in flour, which has got celery salt and pepper in, then egg, and then crushed up Special K. So the reason I used Special K was because I was convincing my wife that that game's so good for you, actually makes you lose weight. And so therefore I use Special K, because some people use Rice Krispies, but I use Special K.
Cornflakes on a lot of taste tests that people do, cornflakes is apparently comes out on top of the best thing to bread anything, chicken and all that jazz.
Well, we don't have cornflakes, so I have to use Special K. But so what I do is I add a little bit of more salt to the Special K as well. So it's got lots of salt over it. And then you dip them finally in this thing, and they look like some sort of sea creature that's been covered in limpets or barnacles. But then you bake them for like 10 minutes maximum, and then have them en masse. Now, this only took a brace home, but if we have guests around, I will go and get a lot of partridges, because for some reason partridges just aren't.
Are we cutting them up fine?
Yeah, fine. Slithers about the thickness of my little finger, which is quite fat actually. So the thickness of a normal person's little finger.
Yeah, have you got a banana for scale?
Yes, quite. Sausage. There's sort of more like a sort of an average chipolata rather than this fat Cumberland sausage of a finger away. But yeah, if you go and do that, and they are absolutely mint. And it's one of those funny things, like Richard was just saying there, that you take this fungus and you go through all those rigmaroles of doing it. And it is a bit of a faff going and doing all these various processes and chipping up. But when people eat them, and that is my gateway drug to get people to eat game, because they went, oh, it's just like that thing you get in KFC. And you go, exactly, but it's partridge and it's even better. And then you can go and be really sort of, zealotry about it.
I like describing partridge as how chicken should taste. And because we're always comparing it to chicken, but any supermarket chicken that we end up buying, I mean, my butcher is fantastic, but it's far away. So the chances of me getting to the butcher's on a weeknight, very slim. So I just buy supermarket chicken. If you put it in a frying pan, it boils before it fries. It's just full of water and it's just awful. So I always say that, yeah, when they say, what does partridge taste like? Is it gamey? I say, no, it's like how chicken should taste.
Yeah.
It's a chickeny flavour, but it's actually got flavour. I've been turning my mother-in-law into an avid game eater for the past sort of 2 months. So we've started with partridge, and then we did a pheasant in a slow cooker. So she's got used to it, and yeah, we're slowly getting there. We had the pheasant schnitzels the other night. Cooked them similar to how you did, but did them with panko breadcrumbs because I didn't have any cornflakes, and they were really good. So she's like that. So yeah, we're getting there slowly but surely, one person at a time.
Work your way up to a jugged hare.
Oh, yeah, that is quite.
We've got mugged hares.
Mugged hares. What would be your gateway drug to Richard to game? What's the thing that you reckon? Because you get a lot of people, much more than Callum and I, who are newbies into this world. What's the thing, other than your amazing sort of mushroomy thing? What's the thing that you reckon you could get from to eat game?
Venison. It's venison, but go for something like the backstrap. So just something so for the non-butchery people, bits either side of a spine. Imagine you're standing in a tree, looking down on top of a deer grazing underneath you. It's the two lines either side of the spine, and
is that the loin?
There's the inside bit as well, because the spine sort of goes through the animal. So there's the bit on the inside which is up against the organs, and then you've got the bit on the outside. Which
the Yanks call that bit the tenders, don't they? The one underneath.
Yeah. So different people have different names for different bits of the deer, and I've watched big arguments occur when people say, well, no, that's this bit, that's bit. I mean, legs are pretty easy because a leg's a leg, front or back, that's or left or right.
You mean
those are your options. Yeah.
Or is it shoulder?
Yeah, here we go.
Or a shoulder.
The long, thin bit that you end up with from that is medallions from that, or something, or that served as a miniature steak almost. Treat it like a steak, fry it up that way or cook it that way. I mean, not too much, that's criminal, but just the right amount of heat with just the right accompaniment. That is probably the easiest way to get somebody to start eating venison, or rabbits, weirdly.
Okay.
So
rabbits.
So rabbit in curry, rabbit, anything, because rabbit's a very, very strong flavor. So you've got to pair it with other strong flavors. People always try and treat rabbit like chicken because it's kind of a grayish meat, or it's kind of a whitish meat. So they treat it like a chicken and they do chicken
I've always
stuff with
been
it.
told that, and I have never cooked a rabbit personally. Maybe
So
that's my New Year's resolution.
do it like with strong flavors, because it has to have a pairing that is as strong as the natural meat of the rabbit. So there's also a thing with rabbit meat as well. Age really matters. A young autumnal rabbit, early September rabbit, is a very, very different flavor to something in March, say.
Yeah.
So because the
older they are, what's the, is it more gamey? What's
strong?
the difference?
The gaminess tends to come more from how they're kept after killing. It's the
musky.
The age of the animal will really tell you. I mean, you could look at the feet of the rabbit and I could tell you what it's going to taste like, or its teeth or something like that. Basically, they have a very short, pretty violent end life, most rabbits, and when you're shooting them, when you're taking them for meat somewhere in between there, that is really gonna. You're taking it in different stages of that development, but they are not getting sweeter. They're not getting to a better flavor. They are going to a stronger flavor, a muskier flavor, as Richard said. But the toughness of the meat and the qualities of the meat in the pan are all dictated by the age of that animal. But also, I'd say 10% comes from the environment as well. So, what they're grazing on.
What age are you looking at for a peak sweet tender rabbit?
About that big.
Yeah.
Like a small loaf of bread.
There's a very good recipe in Clarissa Dixon Wright's game cookbook where she, funnily enough, cooks them with chocolate. And she says for a big old buck rabbit that's probably, you start skinning it, you're going, oh God, that's a bit sinewy. And she cooks it. I think it's an Etruscan recipe, and they cook that with chocolate and tomatoes. And I tried it, and it is wonderful. But like all of Clarissa Dixon Wright's recipes, they have more blimmin' things you have to do, then do this, then do that. I've lost the will to live, and all the family are then starving to death because they're going, how much longer? Oh, don't worry, in another 7 hours and it'll be ready. I mean, it's a bit like some of the stuff that Hugh Fernley Whittingstall used to do with his
Trick is you should shoot it first.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you obviously got to shoot it first. That's what Mrs. Beaton said. First, catch your hare, she said. But I mean, which is the easy bit, really, compared with some of the recipes. But some of Hugh Fernley Whittingstall's things were just so elaborately lengthy that it puts you off. I mean, I'm looking over at my cookery bookshelf, and 3/4 of them sat there are all about game cooking, are using wild food in some shape or form. But the ones from Hugh Fernley Whittingstall are very well thumbed, and they're ones, I must do that. But then you get around to it, oh Christ, I really can't be doing with it. And so there's just one at the end that I do very regularly, which is written by that well-known game chef, Norman Tebbit. Yes, Norman Tebbit. Get on your bike. My dad did that. He wrote a book called The Game Cook, which is very, very surprising, really. And him and Patrick Galbraith became quite good mates. And you can imagine a man of such short temper also has a very short fuse when it comes to cooking. So The Game Cook by Norman Tebbit is stuffed with really easy recipes where he says, well, you could do this, but don't bother because it's a waste of time. So just go and do that. And yeah, but the rabbit section is very thin because let's be perfectly honest, rabbit is a bit,
Well, the Americans do well on this. That if you go to some of the working man's recipes from the States, go somewhere that was written deep in Appalachia, or depending on where you're from, where you're talking about, they have some great recipes for deer, for rabbit, and for squirrels, gray squirrels. And one of the ones we do regularly for rabbits is to put them into brine. So if we are shooting rabbits in the summer, which is always done as an ecologically minded, ethical form of population control, of course, and we're gutting them there in the field, right next to the truck, there is a white bucket that's half filled with a seasoned brine. And the meat, so it goes from being gutted, skinned, straight into the brine. And then it sits there in the brine for an hour or two until we're ready to cook. And then we often sort of fry it or breadcrumb it or do it with the almost a bit like your popcorn partridge recipe. But do it that way, and that really softens the meat, takes the edge off the flavor, and it kind of normalizes it. You know that thing with game where sometimes you get three animals, and the third one has a completely different flavor to the other two, and you can almost tell which bit you've got based on the flavor in your mouth at the end. That normalizes it quite well. But it's a really simplistic recipe because it was done by, well, effectively very, very poor people who needed that meat to live.
I did a similar thing once when I had a Canadian goose. I brined it in. Well, it's notorious for being awful, isn't it? Canadian
Saddle
goose.
flap. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like a
they
flying
say.
carp.
Well, they say get a goose
Brick.
breast,
Yeah.
a house brick, put it in the oven, and eat the brick.
Yeah.
But I brined it in Westmuller brown beer. It's a really nice Belgian brown beer. I brined it in that, lots of salt, and you could see the colour change quite quickly. Did that overnight, and when I just pan fried it after that, and when I cooked it, it was really, really nice. The flavour was good. It wasn't too gamey and irony, and again, introduced somebody to some game meat, and I almost copied the recipe that. Do you remember that chef the Master Chef chap that we did a feature with, Richard?
Oh yeah, Freddie Innes.
I copied his root vegetable mash with star anise and whatnot.
That was quite
fantastic.
funny. Now, listen, I've got a very funny story here, which because we've been talking about weird things you can't eat.
Because we need some content.
Well, exactly. So we were talking about this partridge project, grey partridge project that I was talking about on our farm cluster. And one of the obviously important things when it comes to grey partridge conservation is that all hands are slightly turned against them. So therefore they have got reduction in habitat. They've got a reduction in that important chick food stage, which is a lot of the squishy bugs that are insect larvae, because we have far too few insects because we have been spraying all sorts of nasty things on arable fields for such a long while. And also there's the third leg of that stool, so food, habitat, but you've also got predation. And so therefore we've got a major issue in the fact we've got a corvid abundance, with everything from jackdaws, jays, magpies, crows, even, I mean, back in the days when Dick Potts wrote his seminal work, The Grey Partridge, is that he claimed, with scientific backing, that the rook was one of the greatest predators of grey partridges when they were at chick stage, that they were. So Richard Gould, my business partner, is running all this thing. He was saying, right, so basically what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and increase the habitat, increase the feeding across the farm cluster, but we're also going to look at the third leg of that stool. And so we're going to try and encourage more farmers just to run a couple of Larsen traps across the across the 6,000 hectares of this thing. And then he just said one of these random things, because Richard's brilliant at doing these sort of random throwaway things. He said, of course, the guys used to make a bit of money out of crows back in the day. And I said, well, how did you make money out of crows? And he said, well, he goes, my mate Robbie, he got into taxidermy. So I used to supply him with crows that I'd killed in larcen traps. He'd then stuff them and then he'd put them on eBay and we'd sell them to goths and split the profits 50-50. So apparently there's a hot market for taxidermized crows, carrion crows, in the goth community. So perhaps what we could do...
We need to cut this. No one's dining out on our lunch.
Stop giving away the great ideas.
Yeah, this is what we've got to do.
So look, well, perhaps we could go and fund the recovery of the grey partridge, not like the Duke of Norfolk has done by just spending millions of pounds on doing peppering, is we just kill more carrion crows in larcen traps, which would be good, and then we fund all the feeding and the habitat inclusion by flogging it off to people who like the Cure, the Cult and Sisters of Mercy. It's the way forward.
Well, I've actually been doing goth conservation because the goth numbers have decreased rapidly since the 80s and 90s. I mean, Cyberdog business is going downhill, and I haven't seen moon boots on the high street for years. So I think we really need a concentrated effort to bring back the goth.
When did you last have a snake bite and black? I mean, yeah.
How do you build habitat for goths?
Whitby. But
Whitby.
You have to go to Whitby, build an abbey, and that's it. I went to Whitby on Whitby Goth weekend once by mistake. It was the most amazing thing.
That
wonderful.
Chestnut.
No, it was. I was stood there in a blazer and a sort of shirt, looking a bit like sort of Harry Hill meets Tim Nice but dim, with my erstwhile brother-in-law, one of my oldest old army buddies, and then we just looked like archetypal. We used to be in the Hussle Cavalry, and we were stood there in this place. I went, wow, look at them all. And then we realised it was Whitby Goth weekend. It was like going on holiday to the moon. It was absolutely mint. Really, I really enjoyed them, and they were so nice. I particularly liked the steampunks. They seemed to be slightly more cheerful.
Yeah. Is it the decline of the rural goth in particular? Because transport, or accessibility of information has changed. So if you are a rural goth, you don't have to remain in the shires. You can go off to the city more easily and find other goths to be goth with. Whereas back in the 90s, if you were a rural goth, you just
hung around a skate park. That was
you were just the one there.
Skate park? We don't have skate parks.
You'd find the nearest skate park and the goths would hang out there, but not on a sunny day, obviously.
You became emo as well. I think the goths became emo. My best going out t-shirt in about 2001 was just pure black that had in simple sans serif font across the middle, "Nobody knows that I'm a lesbian." And I had that and a beard that came down to somewhere halfway down my rib cage. It was a good look. I look back on it fondly.
I had pink hair from the front bit all the way around to the back. Not all of it pink, from the front all the way around to the back, because I thought it was really, really cool.
I still have quite a loud cravat.
That's the most negus thing. One time we ate foie gras off of just a regular Ritz cracker.
Good God, no. Oliver. Anyway, listen, it's nearly Christmas.
You nearly puked.
It's nearly Christmas.
It's nearly Christmas. So we've surely got to go and have some jingly bells and what you want for Christmas. I'll tell you what I want for Christmas. I want peace, love, and to have a nice meeting with Ben Goldsmith in January, which I've got. He's coming to see me, Ben Goldsmith.
Do you want to explain to all the boys and girls listening who Ben Goldsmith is?
I had to Google when you met Ben Goldsmith.
Ben Goldsmith. Well, the Goldsmiths are quite fantastic. When you talk about families who have done stuff, I mean, they are good. So Ben's dad, Jimmy Goldsmith, was sort of the man who was probably the founder, I suppose, of like UKIP, and he said, no, we're not going to go and do all that Euro stuff, and he was sort of the first person who made not being pro-European popular, and is a very, 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 very wealthy banker, and he's got these amazing kids who, like, one goes off and marries Imran Khan, Another one goes off and she collects superb art and is one of the most glamorous women we see. Zach Goldsmith, he becomes a minister. He's now Lord Goldsmith. And you got Ben, I think he's the youngest one. And he's embraced nature recovery, but he's embraced it in the way that lots of rich people do, because that's the only people who can afford to do it, by rewilding. And he goes on X and he makes outlandish claims about things. And he said something I thought was a bit daft about hedges, that all our hedges in this country are all in terrible shape and they're all flailed to sticks. And I said, well, I can prove you're wrong there, chum. And I showed him a bit of a hedgerow management plan for one particular farm and a great big hodgepodge of hedges which we've managed better for wildlife. And hey presto, he went, all right, okay. And I said, come and see us. And he went, okay, I will. So Ben Goldsmith in the new year is going to come and see us in little old Suffolk, and we're going to show him that possibly he was incorrect. And so therefore, obviously, I don't really want Ben Goldsmith for Christmas. That's a ridiculous thing. But it's a little Christmas present. Come early, although he's going to come after Christmas. And so that's what I wanted to do, because I like spreading the word about how hedgerows can be managed and how we're turning a corner in their management. So that's really good. And the other thing that I want for Christmas is is my wife to come home, because she's been away for a bit of a while, looking after her ill mother. And so actually I'm really quite sad is that the two things that I want for Christmas are Ben Goldsmith and my wife, but just not at the same time. And I've got them both coming back, because Claire's coming back tomorrow. Hurrah, from the grim north. And then I'll have a home, and that'd be nice for a bit. And that's all I want. Although I'll probably be bought something.
Does she know that you do the podcast?
Of course she does. Yeah, she sort of, if she's here, she occasionally pokes her head in and goes, ugh, and looks at me and sort of shakes her head with a slightly sort of,
Is that during the podcast, or is that just?
Oh no, during the podcast, and then she'll listen to it afterwards, and she'll go.
Because my wife does the same.
Yeah,
no, she pokes her head in and just goes, ugh.
Oh, for goodness sake!
Just thinks 10 years of this.
Well, poor
Jesus
Amy.
Christ.
Poor Amy, she has to edit all this nonsense down. But I mean, no, I think she likes it, but I think that she probably doesn't think it's half as funny as we do. But
my missus said that she's watched all the Countryside reels on Instagram and they were really funny. And she said, in particular, Richard Negus was very funny.
Well, there you go. You see, your missus is a great judge of character and comedy and humour. Although it did actually make me chuckle, because old Richard there, who actually knows how to make Instagram work, he actually did a very funny one where he was sort of covering himself with brand names as yet another sort of media whore for brands and labels, and that did make me chuckle. And I suppose it's one of these things, right? If you're going to go and be on a podcast, you do a podcast, you have to have a slight level of belief that what you've got to say is A, worth listening to, and B, that you can communicate that thing in a humorous enough or such an intelligent way that people can go, wow, that's brilliant. So, I mean, it is actually putting yourself out there for ridicule. So I'm really pleased that we've actually arrived at the point where now Ben Goldsmith wants to come to me in January, and that the Danes think we're good. I mean, I can't have anything better than that, really.
We do accidentally seem to be doing an okay job. It's almost in spite of our efforts, really. And people are listening, and they are still listening week after week, which is it's really odd, because both of you're not new to content creation. I mean, Callum there has been everywhere with a video camera that he shouldn't be, and you've written about 4 million words about partridges and hedges, and occasionally about farming. And I amongst other things, I've been making podcasts for about 5 years now, and it's weird. It's weird and difficult to get right, because you're committing quite a lot of your time to listening, particularly, hours are meant to be under an hour and never bloody are.
Yeah.
And it's hard to have a conversation that you have that fourth wall, and you're having a conversation that has to be you have to be aware of the listener all the time, because a podcast is a very intimate thing. You are in somebody's earphones. You're in somebody's head most of the time. It's not something that you sort of put on in the kitchen very often. It's often, you're listening on a little pair of earbuds or in the car whilst you're driving on your own or something like that. And I'm always really, that's the weird thing about gratitude, where I'm really happy that someone's listening and appreciates our thing, but I also have that imposter complex that you shouldn't like our thing, really, because it's not very good. It's just, it's just us, it's just me. I'm not a real person.
I absolutely, I have that gratitude thing constantly. I never really suffer with that imposter syndrome. I just think, I don't try to be anything I'm not. I'm always try and be as sincere as possible, and I only want to put content out to help people. If anyone messages me and wants something, I will help them. It's not to grow my own ego in any way, shape, or form. It's a very genuine, sincere thing to help people. If this entertains people, puts a smile on somebody's face, that's all I really want out of it. So I never really feel like I'm trying to teach someone to suck eggs. It always has a purpose. So the imposter syndrome, I don't necessarily struggle with, but I always feel so grateful when people take the time to look at things, or when people message me and it's like a long message and it's how something helps them. I used to love it with my fishing content. I once made it was absolutely stupid, but I decided to put worms on a piece of foam. Someone messaged me once saying that he caught the 2 biggest fish out of their park lake that they've been after forever, and like 2 30-pound carp, thanks to this stupid rig that I'd made up. And just how grateful I feel that I had a platform, I did something stupid, and it benefited someone's life in some kind of way. It's just it's the best thing about making content.
It was the thing that sort of not eroded the imposter complex, but the thing that made me realize, oh crap, this is a real thing. I have a few other shows, and we have one which most people listening to this probably will have never come across, but it seems to be quite big in the States. It's called Modern Outdoor Survival, and we sort of tried to do outdoor skills and safety by stealth, by tricking people into listening to something that had survival in the name, but actually giving them information that worked. And we have one listener who, in the middle of COVID, she's allowed me to tell this story before, and I won't say who she is or which car brand in the Midlands she works with, but she went a bit mad, in her words, and she got really into prepping and survival and was really worried about nuclear war and Ukraine, and that Russia at some point is going to nuke the greater Birmingham area and she would have to survive off the land. And then she started listening to our podcast and realized that it was all a bit mad and maybe there's some practical stuff. So we've got a little training business that we take people out and train them. And she came out for a private session with her and her husband, and that sort of eroded all their assumptions about what survival was like. And then she carried on listening and became a big advocate for that show. And then about a year later, I discovered something really unnerving, which was not only does she listen every week to the episodes, she puts it on the speaker system on the car production line that she works on. So in the middle of the night shift, while people are building cars that go over land, that they're listening to me talk about the best techniques for crapping in the wilderness or stuff like that.
That's the reason why Land Rovers fall to bits then, eh?
Oh, yeah. And also, when we took her out, we sort of walked past 3 Range Rovers that were parked up, and she was pointing out the bits she'd built on them. So it's meeting the real people from who are in the audience is a weird thing. And that's my Christmas thing almost. I really appreciate all the support we've had for the show. And I'm also really, really looking forward to not going online and not speaking to people and I'll speak to friends, I'll speak to important people in my life, but I'm not going to go on Twitter and browse that or go on Instagram and see what other people are doing. I'm just going to put my phone away and look at it once a day and not have to worry about things until January. That's what I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also looking forward to the fact that on Christmas Day, rather than the usual thing, we're actually going up north. So we open our presents, and then we've got to go up north to go and be with my wife's mother, who isn't well. And that's going to be quite weird because I haven't actually driven anywhere on Christmas Day morning since I was probably in the army. And that used to be quite weird that you go out and the Christmas Day commute, the Christmas Day drive is the one day in the year where there are lots of people who there is this sort of slight funny thing that permeates through. That goodwill to all men does bizarrely even filter down into how
I
people
know,
drive.
isn't that
People
strange?
smile. Yeah.
There's actually I can't remember what book it was I read. There's actually a thing where when people all get, it's called, is it Evanescence? When lots of people all get together and are doing like one particular thing, your happiness increases exponentially, and that goodwill will be amplified, because it also explains why if you go to a music venue and everyone's there for a particular good time, it's quite significantly better than just listening to that song
Yeah.
on your own. There is actually a chemical reaction that happens when you're with all people around a common goal, or you know what everybody's doing, that your pleasure receptors are greatly heightened. It's fascinating, really.
Yeah, but it seems to be able to permeate through the 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 doors of a car and out onto the A14 and then onto the A1. It's quite peculiar, isn't it? Because people generally sort of smile, and there's almost traffic jams are caused because everyone's trying to let the other person out. Oh no, after you. And then come Boxing Day, it all just turns back into Mad Max, and everyone's trying to cut everyone up and smash them up. And if they had guns attached to their cars, they would most definitely be flicking the switch on to sustained fire because they want to kill everybody. But Christmas Day, there is peace to all men, even on the A14, which is a nice thing. I don't know what it's like on the M25. Were we supposed to talk about milk? There was something that I can remember. We had some show notes about milk. What's this about milk?
I sent you an Instagram reel. Have you still got the Instagram reel? I watched it about 6 times and I thought, what's the world coming to? This is the social commentary that the CountrySlide needs. Play the reel. Play the reel.
Hold on.
Or do you want me to act it out?
Is that the drink and drive one? No.
Oh yes, I know this one. Yes, this is about whether drinking whole milk is a sign of masculinity, and it's a green flag for women who want a real man, whether they actually drink actual milk.
So the premise, I don't know if we do need to explain this in case we do get copyright flags, but the premise is 2 women on a podcast, and they say that the man drinking whole milk, that is a very masculine thing, because most men will drink soy milk or won't drink milk at all.
Really?
And they are absolutely confused by the fact that men will drink milk.
This makes then my mate Hugh Fawkes the most masculine male in Wales, because he is the best milk farmer in North Wales by far. He does proper calf at foot dairy, and he has a massive social media following because all he does is talk about how this wonderful life his cows have, and people come from literally from the Wirral and Cheshire to come and buy milk off him. And he's also bizarrely ended up in an Abercrombie and Fitch photo shoot this year, and he's like the face of Abercrombie and Fitch. He's the most. I don't understand how he ended up being so masculine, but there he is. So that the real milk thing is that the.
Am I masculine then?
Are you not masculine?
Am I one of the lads? I drink a flat white with full fat milk.
Is that if you have to ask? What's a flat white?
I don't know.
Come on.
No, he makes. We went on that countryside march, and we went into Blimming Greg's, and he was getting this thing with cinnamon and God knows
Oh,
what else on it.
I got
And
a flat white.
Flat white, and I just said I'd like a cup of coffee with some cold milk. And the
Yeah, you
man
got a
behind the
flat white.
counter said, coffee with cold milk. I went, yes, that's what I want. Coffee with cold milk. So I don't know. I drink a lot of milk. Man, I've essentially got a hangover.
We're in the culture category, and you two don't know what a flat white is.
No,
It's
I've
not
got
real,
no
is it? It's
idea.
just
It's
made
not.
up.
It's just make up stuff. I mean, mind you, one of the coppers who was in the queue there, he was all ordering stuff with carrot and cinnamon and God knows. Was it called a pumpkin latte or something? I thought,
pumpkin spice latte.
I'm not being funny, but see, back in the old days when I was in London, when I was a young soldier,
It's called Londinium, then, wasn't it?
if you, yes, I would. I was at the
Came over with
Legion.
Caesar.
Well,
Yeah.
I was in the 9th Legion. If you went up to a copper and you said, would you like a spiced latte? His response would have been to take his truncheon out and smack you in the solar plexus and say, don't be chopsy, son, on your way. No, I mean, they're all like eating and drinking stuff that sounds like they're more like in one of those Abercrombie and Fitch commercials. But anyway, I drink milk. We've got a lovely dairy just down the road. Fem Farm Dairy produces one of the greatest cheeses, Baron by God. They're all into all their sort of unpasteurized milk. You can buy that from out a little machine and all that moolah. Do I drink unpasteurized full fat milk? No, I do drink full fat milk. My wife likes semi-skimmed because she believes that if you have the full fat version, you suddenly bloat up and you become Jabba the Hutt or something like that. I don't believe that. But anyway, I drink proper milk. I think I'm a bit of a bloke, but in my flask, I have black tea, 4 sugars, because if you put milk in it, turns into sort of cottage cheese down the bottom. So I'm sort of slightly blokey, slightly black tea. I don't have lemon in it. I'm not completely effeminate.
I subscribe to this thing that anything that isn't whole milk is just water that's lying about being milk.
Yeah. White
and
water.
Some people quite like it. I can see why, but there's oat milk, soy milk, coconut milk.
It's not milk.
It's not milk. The only thing I like is coconut water. Is actually quite nice, but especially if it comes out of a coconut rather than out of something made by Tetra Pak.
I like full milk, and I don't want it with bovur in it either. That thing that's supposed to lessen the methane content of it. I don't give a monkeys as to whether some scientists have gone and done anything to go and research this.
What is this? This is. So I've got lots of people from around my way. Lots of people in carp fishing, and their hats tend to be made of tin foil. My Facebook friends are a lot of them deep conspiracy theorists, and they are losing it over this.
Yeah.
Additive.
I'll tell you what the mean. This is as I'm seeing.
I respect you as a person that isn't
a tinfoil hat wearer.
No. Yeah.
Well, look, this is like a lot of stuff, right? Is that this is an additive, food additive, which is supposed to basically, because the cow is a ruminant, so therefore how they eat is different to us. We have a different digestive system. We've got digestive system very similar to dogs and pigs. Horses have their own unique one, and ruminants are like deer, cattle, sheep, right? So they have lots of stomachs, and they regurgitate and it goes down. So it's not actually cow farts that does the thing. It's when they regurgitate it back up and it releases methane into the atmosphere. And so therefore, the idea of if you feed them this additive, it reduces the methane levels when they regurgitate it up to chew the cud, right? Now, I've got no doubt that it does this. And the tests that scientists have thus far done are absolutely fine. But do remember that scientists who are dealing with agricultural chemicals that are supposed to be wonderful are the same scientists who produced all the things that killed all the insects, and they went, oh, and then they blame the farmers for it. Then they're the same scientists who go and produce all this stuff. Don't worry, we've done all this science. And then they've discovered 20 years later that, oh, yes, well, yes, of course, all your hair's fallen out, but at the time the research was fine. And you then go and say, well done, scientists, and they'll just blame farmers, because that's basically all it is. Because at no point in history has a spray operator invented the chemical in their sprayer. At no point in history has a farmer said, I'm just going to chop that hedge down, because a scientist has told them to do it. So I think this Beauvais thing is yet another stupid, half-assed nonsense that they are trying to assuage our guilt about
Are we going to
greenhouse.
backtrack on it?
Well, I expect they will in 20 years' time, once they've discovered that all our hair's fallen out and that our genitals are now growing out of our ears as a result, they didn't know, they didn't have the science at the time. I mean, I'm not being some anti-science tinfoil hat wearer, but it's bloody tedious. Just go and, if we looked after our livestock properly and we stopped transporting bloody coconut and almond oil and water halfway around the world, then we might be back better. No, just drink proper milk, eat proper food. You can't have strawberries in December because they don't grow here then. And most importantly, eat seasonal, eat local, and popcorn partridge, and you might be fine.
But it's Arla milk, right? And Arla makes everything.
Of course they do.
Including stuff for Tesco's and all that. So this additive is basically impossible to get away from.
Yes, possibly, but I think, to be fair, it's only certain farms where they're doing it. It's not all Arla milk. They're doing some trials, and we are the guinea pigs. Well, I'm not, because I don't drink that crap. But
I just I just buy whatever can be bought. I don't, there's very few dairy farms in urban Essex, so I'm supermarket bound if I want.
Well, I agree entirely, Callum, and I think is one of the biggest challenges. Is all very well for us three, or actually for Richard and I, to say, "Oh, we ought to eat this, we ought to do that. This is how we eat. We're very, very rustic. We know every single thing that we eat. We almost knew its mother before we shot it, right?" And that is not the case for 82% of the population who live in urban areas, and I genuinely do get it, but I think that when people are messing around with our food for alleged benefits to the environment without actually thinking, well, let's go and be a bit more fundamental. Just shoving yet another chemical into our food chain is probably, have you not learned anything, scientists? Stop being so bloody silly. Just go and eat better.
But it is a bit like we're playing Jenga with our food supply. So we keep pulling bits out and keep poking at things and seeing how long before it all collapses and all breaks. The problem is every game of Jenga ends up with a pile of crap all over the floor, and that's possibly what's going to end up to our food chain and to our food supply if people don't start thinking more than a week ahead with things.
I can't wait to be caught in 20 years' time saying one of my testicles is slightly larger than the other three.
Well, and attached to your ear because you ate that stuff. I mean,
it's because I couldn't help myself with the cheese ball. It was Christmas.
Talking of cheese, right? This is a thing, weirdly, Negus, you've ended up becoming a thing we say here. Because one year you put something on Twitter about, basically Christmas is over and it's time to get back to work and the dogs have had enough cheese.
Yeah.
And that is now, just sometimes a stupid little phrase ends up being used for everything. And now it's just...
The dogs have had enough cheese.
Now the dogs are begging for food and they get a little bit of whatever it is. It's like, okay, the dogs have had enough deer now. The dogs have had enough of whatever is on there. So
the cheese tax.
We're trying to rapidly come to the end of the episode because no one cares anymore. Quickly, what are you two doing? I'm going with Callum first so we can set the bar for, for brevity. What are you doing for Christmas? What's your rough plan?
My Christmas is always to take on far too much stuff that I cannot handle but eventually it will all come good. I start early with the gravy, so I get that stuff out the way, and I cook not one, not two, but 3 separate proteins. So I have a rolled sirloin on the barbecue. Fantastic. I have a turkey that is an apple dawn turkey from a farm in Kent. They are amazing. I only do a crown. I don't have the whole bird. I'm going to brine it this year, like you said, to do with the rabbits. It will be brined this year, so that's an extra step that I really didn't need to do, but I think that's going to raise the bar slightly. And I'm also doing an entire gammon with marmalade glaze. So
That's
that
us
is
3, isn't it?
the jam. That's the 3, the golden trio. And there will be enough. I mean, it does present absolute hell on Christmas Day, but I use a barbecue to sort of help me get through the oven space issue. And yeah, we get there. We get there in the end. That's how we do it. And then you will essentially, everyone will want dinner at like 1, 2 o'clock. Inevitably, it'll be more like 4, 5 o'clock. While everyone's moaning and drinking too much wine. But then they'll be really, I mean, at the point where they've been starving for like 4 hours, they would eat probably quite literal trash and be happy with it. So when I produce such amazing food, they'll love it.
But they're also drunk; they don't even know they're eating amazing food.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah. So what do you apart from having people all around you and behaving very nicely to you on the road, and you driving to the dreaded north, what does your Christmas Day look like?
Well,
Richard?
get up early. But I mean, I get up early every single day because I've got a middle-aged bladder, so I'm up at 4. And then we rush downstairs. We're going to open presents. My parents, who live in the other half of the house, we're going to go and open presents together, have breakfast up north, arrive there for sort of late lunch. I don't know what they're going to cook. Yorkshire puddings, probably, and brawn, that will be it. Whatever they eat in Yorkshire. And then early on Boxing Day, Charlie, my son, and I, we're racing down. My wife's staying up there for a couple more days. We're racing down because we're supposed to be shooting on Boxing Day, and he's supposed to have his first day shooting because usually he's obviously only beating. And so we've done all this. So I'm not even going to be drinking very much. So I mean, it's not the usual Christmas, because usually Christmas is just a sort of, you open a bottle of champagne at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and Claire and I are usually drunk by about 7:30. We stagger down the drive to the church, which is just at the sort of far end of our and we sit in our pew and sort of breathe fumes over everyone, and then we stagger back, and then we have half a pig with loads of eggs, and then remember that, well, Christ, we're supposed to be cooking something now, and then do that, and then come about the King's speech, where they're going, have we had dinner yet? And then we go, is it time for some more cheese? And the dogs are going, I can't eat any more cheese. And then we've sort of just passed blissfully into sleep whilst Charlie is playing some board game and my father is trying to learn the rules with him, but he is 94, so he sort of just loses by rote. My mother has got a hat, one of those paper hats, slightly askew, and she's now dozing gently away. And whoever we've invited round, because we try and invite people who haven't got any family left in the village round, so we sort of have people round here to go and do that, which sounds very Mother Teresa-ish, but it's just quite nice.
It sounds incredibly nice.
Well, yeah, village life really, and so we have all sorts of people around here, and it's really pleasant because you realise people have other traditions at Christmas that you don't, and you go and enjoy that, and then you eat some more cheese, and then someone says turkey sandwiches, and then that's it. But this time, utterly turned on its head. So all those traditions are not here anymore, and I'm not complaining because so I have a very ill mother-in-law who needs to go and have us there. So we are going to do that, and it'll be different. And so therefore, we'll probably, rather than driving home for Christmas, we'll be driving away from home for Christmas, as Chris Rea, sort of in reverse. But there we go.
So you're having a turkey?
I don't know. I don't know what they're going to be cooking. I expect so. They're quite traditional. My sister-in-law, who will be cooking, I presume. So I should imagine it'll be turkey, but we'll see.
We're not really starting until Christmas Eve. This whole sort of long rundown to Christmas. The only Christmas Eve tradition thing we're doing before then is we're recording this on the 18th on a Wednesday night, and the episode's coming out on Friday. But on Thursday, we sort of raise a glass to. Okay, this is going to sound odd, but it's a thing with my family, and I've sort of indoctrinated it into Amy.
I love this. This is the gold. I want to hear what your Christmas traditions are.
I was a bit sad this one, but this is we raise a glass to the crews of the Solomon Brown and the Union Star. So you might not know what the hell I'm talking about, but if you're Cornish, you might do. So 1981, there was this huge storm hit the southwest of England, and there was this one ship, the Union Star, with 8 crew aboard. Well, actually, it was 5 crew, and then a woman and her 2 daughters, and she was the new wife of the captain, daughters from a previous marriage. Engine trouble, water in the fuel tanks, engine stopped, started drifting ashore. Massive rescue attempt, couldn't do it, and then there was this tiny wooden lifeboat came out from Penlee, so Mousel, basically, sort of towards Newlyn that way, and it was all the crew were all local fishermen. Basically, the half of the village knew them or related to them or worked with them, and they all came out. And it's a bit of a spoiler, but they were the last attempt to get these people off this boat before it crashed into the rocks. And the story ends, and there's a great BBC documentary on it if you want to see it all or hear it all. And the story ends with the last radio call from the Solomon Brown, the lifeboat. The captain, Trevelyan Richards, was, they've got 4 off the boat already. Heroic effort. They've just managed to get on. They thought basically this is the last ditch attempt. We're going to try and get a couple more people off, and then we'll just, and there's a crashing noise, and the radio call stops. And that was basically the Solomon Brown being crushed against the rocks by this boat. So this was this huge Christmas tragedy, which massive event in Cornwall. So we start off Christmas on a light note by raising a glass to that. But then we sort of don't do much. And then Christmas Eve, Amy and I will go out shooting. Just not a huge driven thing.
We're so ready for a happy ending.
Well,
I was so ready for it.
Sorry,
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Hey, it's festive. You remember things. But then Christmas Eve, we'll shoot something edible. Just one thing each, and then we'll eat that on the Christmas Eve or be part of the Christmas meal. Christmas Day, we basically ignore people. Although weirdly, we still sell gift vouchers for our foraging courses. People still buy them on Christmas morning. And if somebody's buying a Christmas gift on Christmas morning, we do actually reply to them and say, here's your voucher. Because if you're buying a Christmas gift on Christmas morning, it's got pretty desperate. So we reply and send that off. And then just ignore everyone, apart from family and friends, until about New Year. Although stupidly this year, loads of people have all got little tasks like ours, like hedge laying, because the lane's going to be quiet, because they realise it's Christmas and nothing happens. I've got about 4 people who've all got stupid little jobs. Oh, we'll do that between Christmas because it'll be quiet, which means I'm pretty much flat out helping mates do stupid things with chainsaws or diggers or fishing boats between Christmas and New Year. None of it's very festive, but the only other weird tradition we have is we watch, rather than watching the King's speech, we watch the Titfield Thunderbolt on DVD.
I don't even know what that is.
You're too young to know the
great.
Titfield Thunderbolt.
Train. Yeah.
It's this little village in Devon or Dorset, and it's that their little branch line was going to be closed by beaching in the cuts in 1964, 66.
An Ealing comedy.
Yeah. And they set up their own train line, and the bus company tried to sabotage them, and all sorts of hijinks ensue. But it's a perfect little British comedy, but it's also it was all obviously filmed on location because they didn't do proper sets back then. And it shows a little bit of 1960s Southwest country life. And I don't know, it's traditions you don't plan out, do they? You don't go, right, we'll do this every year. It's just, oh, we did that last year and it was nice. Let's do it again.
I've got a young family, and I constantly keep thinking I'm inclined to start a tradition because I don't really have any from my family. I mean, we used to go to the pub, but the pub up the road actually closed. So the one we used to go to every Christmas day is closed. So now there is another one, but it knocked the tradition on the head. Even though the other pub is in equal walking distance, so it's not really a problem. But I'm inclined to start one. Any ideas?
Well, I used to have a tradition for years, because obviously I worked with horses for so long, that I'd give all the staff the day off, and I would go down and feed all the horses, and rather than mucking them out properly, we had like 32 in the yard.
Shoot 'em.
Well, yeah, I just shot them. No, I then skip them out
It's not
and
sustainable, that.
turn some out in the paddock, unless it was snowing or chucking it down with rain. So they had a bit of a leg stretch, and then just go. And my Christmas day used to be just to sort of moving back and forth to go and bring horses in and out of a paddock, and I'd sort of ride one and lead four back off of the back of one with their rugs on, and then chuck them back in their thing. And it used to be quite fun because on the third or fourth lot I was taking out, I was then so thoroughly drunk as I was trying to sort of jump onto this horse's back, bareback, who's wearing a stinking New Zealand rug, and I'd be trying to jump on there. So I then sort of, and I think it's more of a Christmas tradition, not so much from me, but all the other people looking on as this poor drunken man with horses running amok everywhere. So the whole thing was just about, horses,
I've
really.
got horses and I've got booze, but I'm not sure horse riding alcoholism is really my brand, to be honest.
Well, and that's because you're not like me. You're not Trooper Snooks, are you? I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. You're just supposed to be like a centaur, basically. That's what people used to liken me to. I was sure it certainly had a C and an N and a T in it. That's what people used to say. I'm sure
a
it's
bit
centaur.
shorter.
Yeah, possibly. I just think they abbreviated it because they didn't want to run out of syllables. Just easier to say. One syllable word.
I was thinking more, pigs and blankets on the barbecue pre-Christmas dinner or something.
Good grief, what sort of weirds? No. Do something really stupid. I mean, that's what you need to have. I mean, I like that one. We raise a glass to this hideous tragedy, right? I quite like that. Oh, I'm going to put pigs in blankets on a barbecue. No, you want to have something really weird. Like, just make up a Latin quote. Why do you do that? Oh, it's tradition. You just make up something. Why have you got only one sock on? It's our Christmas tradition. Yeah.
I don't think you can force it either. I think you have to let it develop organically. You can't say, right, we're doing this thing to be our Christmas tradition. You have to look at what you do that's weird and say, oh, we do that every year, don't we? Like our Christmas tradition is we have a massive argument and then the kids open the presents afterwards or whatever it is.
Yeah,
I'm not ascribing that to you.
I just like the Christmas tradition and the fact that you say you get downstairs and Claire will go say, "Has he been to Charlie?" And that he goes and opens his stocking and whatnot, and then we just go and say, "Good, right? He's doing that, so he's now playing with whatever he's got out of his Christmas stocking." And it means that we can open a bottle of champagne at about 5 o'clock in the morning. And that's a Christmas tradition that I like, which we're not going to be able to do because we've got to drive. And I feel slightly despondent that we're not going to do that.
Has anybody said anything nice about the podcast recently, Richard Prideaux?
Do you know what they
Keeper of the podcast?
Pelema, I don't know. It's the names that people put on their reviews. Excellent. Funny, yet informative, that is a must for anyone interested in rural subjects. Keep it up. 5 stars. So, yeah, if you do review the podcast, please, because it does help. And it does seem to help because we're in the top 10 accidentally.
People send me messages about stuff, but I don't know whether it's actually, whether it's about, this, reviews. I don't even know how to look at the reviews. I just think that you just wheel me out every Wednesday and say, speak into this thing that makes you look like you work in a call center. And then I do that. And then I go back into my little bubble again.
I liked your response to one of the reviews, which was just nice one, bud. You are such a dad. That is such a dad thing to do. You might as well put a thumbs up.
Just is thumbs up a dad thing? I do that to all sorts.
Thumbs up is such a dad move.
Well, you look, I'm 50 something or other, 54. And that's what I'm supposed to do is, it's just nice to hear that people actually find our ramblings of entertaining and interest, because it is something where you go and I was quite surprised by the level of interest that they found in us. I just thought they wanted me to talk more about hedges. That's probably what I ought to do, really. I did have one review, though, but I'm trying to find it. So I don't use Instagram very much because I don't really quite know how it works. But someone was very polite. They sent me a thing through, but I didn't follow them. So therefore, it's now disappeared off into the ether. But it said something like, I really like this. Keep up the good work, which I thought, well, that's a nice thing to say, isn't it?
Oh, I have just remembered we've had another one, but it wasn't a review. It was an Instagram DM.
Oh. Go on.
Only on episode 3 so far, but really rather enjoying it. Despite the initial thoughts that the names were a bit posh, the Welsh correspondent isn't Welsh. I'm not Welsh, I'm from Cornwall. And one of you sounds like the guy off of Peep Show. Although that does add some awkwardness that might otherwise be missing. I think that's you, Callum.
I take the awkwardness. I'm not sure who I sound like off Peep Show.
And
the names are a bit posh.
My name's not posh, it's Norman French, despite not being Norman. And
if Callum's posh.
No, hold on. One of us has got a double-barreled name, Callum McKinnon Riley.
I still sound like I should be a gypsy.
Yeah, but double-barreled names just mean you're indecisive.
Yeah, exactly.
Used to be a compulsive indecisive, but now I'm not so sure.
Well, when I was at Sandhurst, we had a lovely chap who went into the Blues and Roars called Rob Phillipson Stowe. And he's a good guy, Rob.
Isn't that a container port?
Well, it was quite funny because our colour sergeant Ingalls, he went, how am I supposed to bollock a man with so many syllables in his name? He goes, from henceforth, you will be known as Felix Stowe. And that was it. So now everybody in the regiment knows Rob Phillipson Stowe as Felix, because he's Felix Stowe. And that was basically because it was impossible for Colour Sergeant Ingalls to bollock a man with so many syllables in his name. And so, yes, Felix, good old boy.
At school, they used to shorten me to McRiley, like I was some kind of cheeseburger.
Have you had a McRiley today?
On my report card, which I think was entirely unfair because I was exceptionally well behaved throughout and not disruptive.
With a surname that is pronounced Prideaux, I'm not going to say what the nicknames end up being, but somebody who has got a proper name and a proper reputation is somebody called Leon, and Leon is going to be our guest next month.
Also a double-barreled name.
He is a double-barreled name. Is it
Chalice Davis?
Chalice Davis. So that's half French, half Welsh.
Anyway, he is going to be our guest for January, and he is a chef extraordinaire. He is a passionate advocate of game, and you can often see him on things related to game cooking online, and I think he's occasionally had a camera pointed at him by Callum there, at least once.
I have photographed him wildfowling, we've gone fishing, we've done lots and lots of different things together, actually. Several things, and we hit it off pretty well.
He's a lovely man. He's very jolly and bubbly and laughs, and he doesn't seem to be an alcoholic, which is most chefs seem to either be manic.
I thought it was a prerequisite for chefs.
I think it is. Yeah. I'm not surprised. I wouldn't want to work in that environment. Absolute madness.
He's our guest next month, and we'd like you to sort of start thinking about questions for it. So I think he's a couple of episodes into next year he'll be on, but you've got time to think up some questions.
I think we're confirmed for recording on the 15th of January.
Yes.
So that will be the 17th the episode will go out.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask him what his favourite type of Vauxhall made before 2004 was. What his favourite model was. I might ask him something about game cooking and wild food too, but...
Wow. A Vauxhall. My brother had a Vauxhall Viva that was absolutely rubbish. And my father had a Vauxhall Victor estate. It was a big V6. Oh gosh, it was a massive engine. I think it might have been 4 litre. A great big silver thing that he bought brand new. And it started rusting within about 6 months of him buying it. And that's what the 70s were like. And if you think about it, we had at that point a ghastly socialist government. And what have we got now? A ghastly socialist government. And do you know what I found on my silver Isuzu pickup truck today? Rust. And it only started rusting under a socialist government. And so therefore there is something about there's something in the air. I'm not I can't
name
mention
an MP. Go on. We can
okay, I'll tell you the one I've got in for at the moment. That one who was quite pretty, who didn't quite make it as leader in the last but one thing. I can't remember her name, and she's now annoyed all the wasps. She's done all the waspy women. Don't promise stuff you can't deliver. My mother used to say that to me. If you say you're going to do something, you got to do it. And so she hasn't done. I can't remember her name. Perhaps we could edit her name in someone else's voice. Kennedy? No, I can't remember. See, you can't remember it. I do quite like that guy who's the NHS guy, though.
Just as a one-off for you, we gave you an episode that was over 45 minutes just for this one because it's Christmas and we're not going to be here next week because, well, Callum is going to be wiping all sorts of detritus out of his kitchen after a monster cooking session. Richard will be in a ditch somewhere between Suffolk and the north of England, and I will inevitably be doing some work that I shouldn't be between Christmas and New Year. Merry Christmas, everybody. Nadolig Llawen. And I'm going to leave you with Callum singing Jingle Bells.
Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad. Dee, dee.
I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. Where's my guitar?
I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart.